All right,
Okay.
welcome everybody to our February 2025 Worthy Town Hall. We have an esteemed panel with us this evening to continue the conversation. Walter McKenzie here in our nation's capital. And as you know, for those who attended our first meeting in January, this is a safe place for educators to come together. It's a nonpartisan place. We're not delving in conspiracy theories. We're not alarmist. We deal in facts, and we're building constructive strategies for educators for what's best for kids and what's best for public education. Because we've started getting more engaged with taking action, we have a commitment to your privacy that I want to make sure I say up front. We will not publish, share, or mention you by your name or any other identifiable information in supporting your voice as an advocate for public education. So please know when you come and get involved and you want to click that button or share that resource, then you could do it with the confidence that we have your back. So on our panel, welcome Cheryl Abshire, EdTech thought leader and former Chief Technology Officer in Louisiana. Susan Brooks Young, author, advocate, and former teacher and principal from Washington State. Kathleen McClaskey, CEO of Empower the Learner and founder of Make Learning Personal in New Hampshire. Samantha Shane, CTE teacher, Worthy Educator leader, and contributing author to our winter journal, Transformation in Action from New Jersey. Welcome, everyone. Glad you're with us.
Thank you.
So when we met in January, we came away with 4 action items. And the first being to get on school board meeting agendas, that where we're really going to have impact is being local. That certainly everything we talk about from municipal up to federal is important, and we can engage wherever your passion leads you. But being active in your local school board meetings is important so that voices are heard. Second, letter writing and calling campaigns. A couple of us talked about that we know firsthand that senators' offices and congressmen's offices keep track of every letter and phone call that comes in so that they know where their constituents fall on any issue. Third, hold your own town halls locally. Get together stakeholders, educators, parents, community members to have these conversations about why these issues are important. And then fourth, organize like-minded people into social media campaigns. Pick a platform, create a group there, meet there, promote information there, keep the conversation going when you can't be in person. So tonight we're going to continue the conversation with a specific focus that has been prompted by what's been happening in the last month, protecting children in our schools. And to begin this discussion, we'd like to do a quick tour through our EDInfluencers website that we have been building as we've been getting input and responding to take action. And so let me share my screen quickly. Here we go. And so when you come to the Worthy Educator and under interactive, click EDInfluencers. You come to this place. You probably have already seen it if you registered for the town hall. We'll talk about our next town hall at the end of the meeting. And you'll notice a number of different resources here. First of all, we wanted to point to the brochure because this summarizes those 4 action steps that I just went over and talks about them in more depth. It's a PDF, so it's downloadable. You can share it with other like-minded educators. It talks more in detail about each of the 4 steps and summarizes why it's time for educators to take action. So know that that is there and it's downloadable and shareable. 2 new services that we posted this last month in response to the need. Number 1, advocacy alerts. If you click on the logo here, you can sign up for a monthly email update on ways to take action, specifically on education topics. It's no cost to sign up, and it will not be excessive. We will not fill your inbox. But if you would like to be in the loop as we have timely announcements on how to be involved, that's a great service to sign up for. Secondly, speak up and be heard. We're going to talk about this more in a few minutes, but this is a place where you can go find a specific issue and within a couple of clicks, send a letter to your representatives, your elected representatives, federally, state level, and local, um, on how you would like them to advocate on a specific education-related issue. And then our quick links. We have our shared resources. This is a Padlet that you can navigate, shuffle, add your own resources, and you'll see that these are all pertinently timely news items, tools, and resources that educators can use to help them engage and advocate for what's important for them in public education. We'll be talking tonight about a number of these things across the top. Transforming education. Our next panel is on March 10th. Our fourth panel, we're continuing this conversation. This is the ongoing conversation about how to reimagine public education. And with all the disruption and all the changes that are taking place, we see this as an opportunity to help advocate for positive change. And if change is coming, we want to be a voice at the table to indicate how to rethink public education in the information age. Mm-hmm. Our media kit, we presented this first last month. We've been adding to it since then. If you're looking for talking points and templates, you see the brochure is there. Videos customized specifically for messaging from educators on topics important in education. Logos for EDInfluencers, badges, and graphics with very succinct messaging. You can download the whole kit. You can certainly just save a specific image, but we have a full kit with the images in different sizes, videos in different formats, all of the templates ready to use, free. We'll keep adding to it, and as we add to it, we'll keep adding to the zip file. So when you download it, you get everything. But know that it's there so you don't have to reinvent the wheel to start that. And the last half of the page, educator information, everything from the Superintendent's Association and Ed Week to K-12 Dive, and the 74. Tools, of course, we need to know what's going on with the federal DOE, so their press releases. You can track any federal legislation through congress.gov, Education Commission of the States for tracking state policy, and USA.gov is great to find out the contact information for all your officials based on your zip code. So all those resources are there. And please keep coming back because we're going to keep updating it in response to your needs and interests as you let us know where you're going as an ed advocate in this very important year of 2025.
Walter, may I jump in for just a moment?
Please, Cheryl.
One of the things I think that people tend to think, why, what is this? Why? What's going on here? Yeah. And I guess I just like to say, knowing Walter from back in the Stone Age, the key is that Walter is doing this as a public service. And that is what has led me to this work with Susan and Kathleen. Susan has done this work time in memoriam. Kathleen, I just met Samantha. And the key is that Walter is spending his own personal time doing this as an advocate for our country for education. And I think most of us on this webinar tonight are. And so, Walter, I just wanted to lay the groundwork that nobody's going to ask anybody for any money. There's no fees.
Nope.
Everything is the circle of trust here. We're building capacity in a time when things seem to be topsy-turvy in terms of education, and how most of us that are educators in this country have seen our careers and worked hard to make sure that every child in this country has an adequate education. And things are in a awry right now, not a partisan conversation, a factual conversation based on what's going on. So Walter, I wanted to give you those little kudos, but also bolster you up a little bit to say there's nothing in it for Walter or any of us other than the key to we've dedicated our lives to public education. And we want to make sure that our children, our grandchildren, and the children that live in our neighborhoods or in our churches or our communities have the same opportunities that we all did. So that's my 2 cents for you,
Amen.
Walter. And Walter did not pay me for this either.
Nope. I'll take you out to dinner sometime, but nope, didn't pay you.
That's okay. I'll take you.
And you know, to take it even a step further, and if I don't say this, I know Kathleen or Susan, Samantha, or Will, and Will, welcome. Will is the head of the upper school at Cape Henry Collegiate School here in Virginia, and glad to add you to the panel. Glad you're with us.
Thanks, Walter.
To take it even a step further, we could sit here every month for 12 months and do what we believe to be right. If you don't get involved and join us, we're just doing what our own conscience tells us to do, what we believe is right and important. So please take the information, do what you can, but please know this is not a spectator sport. There's a lot on the line of public education in 2025. And if it takes side conversations, if you need to hook up with us quietly after this meeting, during the week, to have that conversation about what that could look like and how we can support you to make that happen, please just reach out and let us know. The one thing we don't want is crickets. The one thing we don't want is to go to bed tonight, wake up tomorrow and think, it's business as usual. We really want people to sit up and say, this matters. And so that's why we're here tonight. So thank you, Cheryl. Any other opening words from the panel? Cheryl got the juices going. Thank you.
Okay.
So another item here on the site, and now I'm going to totally bamboozle myself. Where am I sharing? Here we go. Okay, back to the site for a quick minute. At the very top, right underneath the town hall, you'll see a link, kind of a sky blue topic, protecting children in schools. And it was through Kathleen's urging, because she was saying to me, you know what, we got a lot of stuff in this site, but we need a nice organized list of what we're going to be talking about that people can look at and say, aha, here it is right in front of me. So when you click on that link, you get a short, hot list of news items about what's happening around the country in districts in response to this question of how do we protect our children in schools. And just to quickly look down, there's Chicago, the state of Ohio, the state of Connecticut, Denver Public Schools, LA Unified, Norwich, Connecticut, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and 2 links from Santa Ana Unified Schools. And each one of them is a very pertinent, fact-filled summary of where these districts are right now, or in some cases, state governments. So what I'd like to ask you to do for the next, I'd say 3 minutes, if everyone would go to this link, open it up, select one of the articles. It could be one that's in your backyard. It could be across the country. It could just be the way the headline reads and it catches your attention. But grab one and start to look at it. And then let's come back together and talk about what you got out of the article you were looking at and what that district or state is doing in their neck of the woods.
Walter,
Walter,
can you put that link in the chat?
Right, I was
Good
just going
idea.
to ask the same thing for people who were sitting back and going, oh, this is so cool, I'm getting a tour, and they weren't clicking on anything. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, let me put it in the chat. And
And make
because
sure that it goes to everyone, not just to the
of
panel.
course, of course.
Yeah.
And just so everyone gets the same directions. Let me get the chat box. When you go to this link, it takes you to the main page. And right there on the main page, you'll see, oh, wait a minute. Did I do it to the right group after you told me to?
Ooh, I'm
No,
going to do
you
it.
didn't.
I'm
Yeah,
going to
no.
do it right
There you
now.
go.
Okay,
Thank you,
there it
Cheryl.
is.
So as soon as you come here to the page, it's that blue text, protecting children in schools. And so we'll take 3 minutes. Everyone grab an article and take a read. for those of you just joining us, we're looking at news items under topic Protecting Children in Schools at the top of the EDInfluencers page. And the link is in the chat box if you need it. I'll give everybody about another minute. So there's amazing work going on around the country. And for those of you in the audience, I'm not finding the setting to be on mute. Alita, because it's a webinar, there is no mute setting. The panel can be heard. You can talk with us in the chat. And if you want to use your microphone, if you'd rather do voice, we can give you permission to hop on with voice. So just let us know. But we'd love to have you join the conversation as we're talking about these articles. So panel, what did you grab? I can guess who grabbed what, but what did you grab and why? What article jumped out at you, and what were your thoughts?
Well, let me just say that I looked at the Portsmouth, New Hampshire article that came out in the Portsmouth newspaper, as well as the guidance from their attorneys around immigration.
Yeah.
And what I really gather from all this is that probably for the first time that we actually have to be so conscious of this happening in any school in the United States. Something we never had to be concerned about necessarily, especially here in the Northeast. I'm sure that, in the South or on the border, I'm sure that this has already been in place. But I was just very surprised. But I thought to myself that here we are, 2025, and we have to come up with very strict protocols around people ICE entering your building and what you do. So that was like a real eye-opener, that this could actually happen and that even in our local schools, I mean, we're a fairly small state. And so I discovered this in my search, and I was very surprised when it came up with Portsmouth. But for those that are in the audience, this happens to be a legal document. An attorney actually drew up this document on the procedure, and we shared this out. And it's something that if you know of a school or something, it may be a good point of reference, because you have to be really follow some sort of procedure. And you have to not really, there's no emotions to any of this. And that you just, the protocol is important so that the right people are there to respond. I also dug a little bit further around this, and basically FERPA, which is, a law that's passed many, many years ago, you really can't divulge the name of any student in your school, according to the FERPA law. So just there's another legal point of reference around these protocols, and you'll see that in here. So that, and I'm sure that many of the districts that you're from or they're associated with may have something, but this may be a good, point of reference to share.
Thank you, Kathleen. And I think the idea that we're sharing information is key here, because if you're sitting in Yuma, Arizona, the laws in the state of Arizona may be different, and you may have very different guidance from local attorneys, or if you have counsel through your Board of Education. So please take everything that's shared with the understanding that there's a context.
And may I jump in, Walter?
Please, Susan, yes.
Okay, so I looked at the absolute last link, which was the message from the school board in Santa Ana, California.
Right.
That district is quite large and it has a very large Hispanic population. Some of the folks there are there with documentation, others are not. But right now, things are very difficult in that district because there are so many anecdotes about people being picked up and detained with or without appropriate documentation.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I thought was really important, in addition to the legal part of it, is the personal part of it. The president of the school board created a video. It's not here, it's the next link down, but
Yes.
what it does is it's him saying to the community, we have your back. This is what we're going to do. This is how we are dealing with these issues. And actually, he lists 3 things that he says the district will do. They'll address the uncertainties and challenges surrounding immigration. They will reaffirm, or they are reaffirming, their commitment to protecting every student and family, and that they are providing clear actions that align with legal and ethical standards, but still fostering trust and well-being in the schools. And coincidentally, today, I mentioned to Walter just before we came on, I received an email from Chris Reichdale, who is the superintendent of schools in Washington State, where I live. And his message starts off by saying, our vision for education in Washington centers on equity, inclusivity, and unwavering beliefs that every student deserves access to a high-quality education, and that the current executive orders undermine these principles, our nation's Constitution, and Washington state law. So I think it's important that these messages are being sent out to communities at large.
You know,
Thank you.
Susan, I'm going to jump in and say that leadership is paramount in everything that we're talking about. And
Yeah.
Susan, what you're referencing is leadership by a state superintendent that is being disseminated in a way that gives support and substance to the ideas that you espoused. Now, Walter, as I usually am in my renegade stage,
Please.
I did not pick one of those articles.
Okay.
I want to talk for just a moment about what's going on where I'm living now in Texas. Everyone knows that Texas is a border state to Mexico and has a large border with Mexico, and many school districts, independent school districts that border that area. And so the news is rampant with conversations about, and the Texas Education Agency and people that are concerned have all come out and said that while FERPA, Kathleen, as you mentioned, is absolutely applicable to going into a school. But the conversation that's going on in Texas is that as students are being transported on buses and they are stopped by ICE, if the students do not have the proper documentation, there is a very strong possibility they'll be taken off the bus and picked up.
Right.
Even to the point of some school district superintendents now along the border are saying that they are going to have a school employee follow the school bus in case a child or children are pulled off the bus so they can remain with the child and the bus can continue on its route. Now, that should be concerning to our country and our populace at large, because, you know, it's Texas, because our governor and our legislature are more akin to let's check this out, and not like you, Susan, up in Washington, or Kathleen up in New Hampshire. We've got a little bit more chaotic thinking going on down here in Texas. And while this isn't a political conversation, Walter, politics play into it
Oh, yeah.
because of who is protecting our children and what
Yeah.
are their leanings and their vision on what is the right thing to do with children, documented or undocumented. So there's concern in our school districts here in Texas that while they may not be going into the schools, there are lots of other ways to check on status of children, and even children that are here legally. Do they carry that documentation with them
Right.
in their backpack or, in their back pocket? So
Yeah.
there's some fear here in Texas,
Of
Walter.
course. Of course. And I think that's pervasive. Like Texas is certainly a hot spot, but even if you're sitting in New Hampshire, Kathleen, I'm sure people are afraid. If
Oh, yeah.
Washington State, Susan, people here in the nation's capital. I mean, the things that are being done are happening so quickly, and that's why it's so important for all of you who are on tonight to know that you're not alone, and you have like-minded career educators who support you and are here for you, so that however you decide to advocate, know that you're not alone. Some of the other articles on here, the ACLU Ohio advising the state on how to handle this. Ned Lamont in Connecticut working with his state superintendent, coming out with a complete statement on how it will be handled in the state of Connecticut. Denver Public Schools already suing DHS about bringing ICE agents into schools.
Mhm.
Los Angeles Unified sending out a Know Your Rights document to all community members so that they know what they can expect and what they should be able to rely on in terms of their rights. And we've already discussed Portsmouth and Santa Ana. Not to put anybody on the spot, but I also don't want to elbow people out. So Will and Samantha, did anything jump out at you? And share your thoughts.
Yeah, Walter, I'll jump in really quick.
Please.
Nothing earth-shattering. I think the takeaway for me after reading the article about from Norwich, Connecticut, the Board of Education, their letter. You know, a lot of districts, a lot of schools, a lot of places are sending out clarification on policy procedure and the stance that the school is taking, right? And I think that's really good. But I think my message to the educators out there is if you haven't heard from someone, you need to ask, right? What do we do if somebody shows up? What do we do if somebody makes a phone call? What do we do if the kids ask us a question? I think it's incumbent upon all of us to be experts. And, I was thinking about preparing for this panel. I work in a what I would probably consider a low risk area, right? Like suburban Virginia at an independent school. But as an educator, regardless of where I'm working, it's still my job to not add to the hysteria or spread misinformation. I need to know what I'm talking about, right? Educators need to be educated. And so I think that's a big takeaway for all of us that I'm seeing as a common thread through a lot of these articles is just getting the information you need so that you can lead, getting the information you need so that you can take care of kids regardless of where you are or where you're working.
Thank you.
I'll jump in. So I looked at Connecticut.
Yes.
And one of the things that really stood out to me is one, we should know as educators what the procedures are for our district, but also as the teacher in the classroom, what activities are you doing to foster community and a sense of belonging, right? There's a lot of fear out there, and I think sometimes we need to know the policy, but then we need to focus on the humans in front of us, right? And creating that environment for them to still learn and engage in learning. And so that theme really stood out to me about, okay, we still are teachers. We're still going to make these students feel seen and heard in our classrooms.
It's so true. And I think that's where we all come from as educators is what is best for kids. We don't need to get bogged down into discussions about this extreme or that extreme, or who we trust, or who we think is speaking from an intelligent point of view. If anything, we need to be building bridges where we can. But when we do speak, and I always call this the ASCD way when I was with ASCD, you take the high road. You stay above the fray. You don't get pulled into fights that you can't win. You talk about what we can all agree on, which is, hey, these are our kids. They deserve to feel safe and secure. They should be able to rely on us to know that we will have their best interests at hand. And at the end of the day, no matter who you're talking to, when you're sitting down with them and talking about their kids and your kids, we all have those same values. And so,
Walter,
Samantha,
can you
thank you.
stop the share there? The people
I'm
are
sorry.
hoping they can see
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah. There you go. I want to bring in Richard Lang from Chicago. I've known Richard for years working with Illinois ASCD. He read the Chicago article and he wanted to grab the mic and talk more about it. So Richard, let me show my technical proficiency and get you in here. First of all, I've got to be able to see Richard. Richard, are you still there? Did you hop off? Oh, here you are over here. Never mind. Walter's catching up. There we go. All right, so Richard, welcome. Let's hear that golden voice of yours and talk to us about what it's like on the ground in Illinois.
On mute
There you
and
go.
video. There we
Hey,
go. All right.
hey,
Ooh,
all right.
Put in the nice background. That's
Very
cool.
official looking. There you
I
go.
don't have to clean the house then.
There you go.
Yeah, just a real quick story. I worked at CPS high school, K through 9 through 12 for about 10 years.
Yeah.
And about 10 years ago, the high school got for the first time flat screen TVs in the hallway to make announcements. And I thought this was kind of cool, kind of nice. And the first thing they put up was not the school play or the lunch program, join the arts club and so forth. It was what to do if an ICE agent catches you after school on the way home. First time. And it was like just shocking to see this.
Yeah.
Again, how about the school play? No. And then it said, stop by the office. We have lawyers that you can work with in 28 different languages.
Mm-hmm.
So this was going on. This was, again, about 10 years ago. So a lot of this is really nothing new. But reading the Chicago article, they referenced 5 different schools in the Chicago area about their suggestions about safety and so forth. It was kind of interesting because some of the schools were on the same page, some of them were not. It seemed very individual. Basically, my summarizing was some schools said that the teachers called the parents and said, send your kid to school. Mm-hmm. And then the other article, part of the article said, be very sensitive, don't encourage them if they don't want to send their kids to school. And so that was a discussion. I was at a meeting last week with some educators, and the discussion came up. We're a safe environment, safe place, send your kids. And I got kind of a little bit of a finger pointing and said, well, you got to be careful. You really can't do that. You can't call parents and say, send your kid, Rose. We're okay here. We're safe here. And so that article touched on both. So I thought that was interesting. There was no major conclusion, but that's okay. They discussed, should you call the parents or not to have your kids come to school?
And I think that's a good example of sharing information because, whether you've already thought all that through locally or whether this gives you that kind of broad brush of, wow, these are things we've got to consider that, we haven't been put on the spot yet. But as Cheryl said, whether you've had to face it yet or not, be aware and be ready. I think Samantha said, know what your local district's policy is going to be on this. Now, Keisha, you're there in the chat, had said that Chicago had stepped up recently, and Susan, you confirmed. So whether or not Keisha can hop on, Susan, can you tell us a little more about what you know? How is Chicago following through and demonstrating where they are with advocating for kid safety?
Well, my impression, I have done some work in CPS over the years, consulting on different things. And one of the things I've noticed about them kind of all along is that when something comes up that impacts students, my perspective, and that may be totally different from yours, Richard, I don't know, but my perspective in the roles I was playing at the time was they did step up for kids.
Yeah.
And they did do whatever they could. Sadly, they had lots of opportunities at times to need to do that, but they did. And I never worked with anybody there who I felt like was not thinking about putting children first in what they were doing. And I think my impression was that when the announcement came and the rumors started that Chicago was going to be targeted first as a
Wow.
major city,
Okay.
that the response to that was not on our watch. I don't know, Richard, do you think that I misinterpreted that?
No, I think and I think part of that comes from our governor, J.B. Pritzker.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, he says, bring it on. And
Yeah.
he was very, very pro, let's take care of the schools, let's protect the kids and so forth. So unabashed, rumors have it he's going to run for president maybe in a couple
Right.
of years.
Right.
But he is working very closely with CPS, which has a long history of not getting along so much with Springfield and the governor. But in this particular case, they're all bounded together and really watching out for the kids.
Excellent. Any other articles that weren't mentioned?
Mm.
I know we referenced Los Angeles. Ohio, it was actually their chapter of the American Civil Liberties Union that advised on legal rights of immigrant students.
Well, you know, Walter, one of the things that occurs to me, and of course, we've been talking about this for a little while, is that many of the parents who have children that may be affected by this
Mhm.
may not be the most well informed about their rights. And if fear is, you know, there, then what's the outcome of that? I think is, you know, as you mentioned, Richard and Susan, don't send your children to school. Maybe you ought to think about if you send your children to school. So then what's the outcome of that? That children that may be second language speakers, that may already be behind because of the pandemic that we know is a national issue, these children are then being denied another opportunity to have, you know, an adequate education. So they stay home because they're fearful of, even if the students are naturalized, their parents may not be. And
Right.
so the children are picked up because they don't have the proper documentation on them. And how are the children, you know, rescued? An undocumented parent has to go pick them up, and then so this
Right.
circle of okay, we're going to get you one way or the other,
Right.
to me puts so many children that are the neediest at risk. And that's what continues to concern me, is that we don't have a concerted effort. You know, we've got Pritzker in Illinois, we've got the governor in California, we've got the state superintendent, you know, in Washington, but state by state,
Yeah.
there's guidance being sent out on maybe we'll protect our kids, and hey, maybe we're not going to protect them because we're going to follow, you know, guidance from the U.S. Department of Ed, if it, you know, depending on when it exists and
Right.
when the new you know, head of the Department of Ed may be confirmed or not. And so I'm worried about these kids, and
Yep.
I'm worried about these children significantly.
Mhm.
And I don't think there's any way that they win, because honestly, if the pervading fear sets in and children choose to stay home, that
Mhm.
creates an attendance record over time of someone who's no longer coming to school. And then if at some point someone requests records and legally obtains records, there's these huge red flags of families that are no longer sending children to school, and there's still a mark on them. So really, morally, the impetus is creating a safe place where they know they can come, receive the education that Cheryl so passionately talks about, and make sure that we don't put them in a bind where no matter what happens, the
Yeah, and if
same
they
logic
don't
will take
come, you
place.
said it, Walter, so eloquently, then they send out truants in attendance
Yep,
to a house that may have undocumented people. So these kids and their families are at risk.
exactly. Richard, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, just one more quick comment. I'm working at a school right now that has a large number of immigrants from Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah,
And what's kind of interesting, the kids get along fine. They play games together. I mean, I'm talking high school, late high school,
yeah,
and they really enjoy the class. But they're very fearful that they're going to get exported back to their home country to and serve in the army. So one of their fears is that they don't call themselves what I think they're draft dodgers. Somehow they made it all their way to Chicago,
yep.
and their fear is they're going to be picked up by ICE and sent back to the front lines between Russia and Ukraine. But
Wow.
the fun part is they get along together. You can't tell unless you hear them talk who's Ukrainian, who's Russian, as they play board games and get along. You know, of course, it's the parents, it's the adults that are causing the problem, not the kids. But they're technically draft dodgers from Ukraine.
Amazing. Amazing. Don is in the chat box saying school superintendents are taking great risks on behalf of students. They're sharing from different parts of the country about what they're encountering, including ICE agents riding in the back of patrol cars, following students home, behaviors that we never thought we would see. Now, there is an act that is being reintroduced in Congress. It was first introduced in the 118th Congress and is now being reintroduced in the current Congress. I just need to get a hold of my toolbar so I'm actually able to share this. All right, so here we go. I've got to come back to this. When you're on the EDInfluencers page, if you come down to Speak Up, Be Heard, if you've been following us online, we had announced last week a letter writing campaign to reauthorize the Peace Corps Act. You know that budgeting for US aid had been shut down, and so the Peace Corps is one of those agencies that works internationally that relied on that money. And so we set up a very easy way to click through and express your support to your representatives in the Congress and in the Senate to reauthorize the Peace Corps Act. As of tonight, we have just posted this live for the town hall tonight. An easy way to show your support for protecting sensitive locations. This is a bill that's being introduced both or reintroduced both in the House and in the Senate, that no one should have to go in fear to their doctor, their school, places that provide public assistance, places of worship, law offices and courthouses, polling places, public assistance offices. And we've set this up, much thanks to Susan for coaching me through this and helping me learn how to set this up, through a free service called ResistBot, where if you approve of this language, and this is the exact language that we put into ResistBot, and you go to either this link or just on your phone, text to 50409, this 6-letter code, PWQJFO, it's an automated service. It responds and says, would you like to add your name to this? You say yes. It'll ask for your name and email. It'll tell you who your representatives are because this is set up to go to House and Senate. And when you click, it sends it so that all your representatives get from you this exact wording that you want them to support this legislation. And requires no extra work on your part. It has done the homework for you so you can see the outline of the issue. The link's up here at the top. If you're a real policy wonk, Richard, you can click the HR bill and the Senate bill and read the details all the way down to the actual bill itself if you're really into the jargon and the language. But This is a way to get involved where you don't have to go back and do all the homework yourself. You don't have to figure out who your representatives are. You don't even have to compose the letter. If you like the wording, you simply click here and go to ResistBot. It prompts you through. As Susan can tell you, even I could do it. It
You
asks
know,
me the question.
Walter, I hope that people will share this because this
Right.
group tonight, we are small but mighty.
Yep.
But the key to this type of work is that it gets, for lack of a better term, social mediaized. That, you know, I know now I'm going to take this and post it on my LinkedIn, my Instagram,
Yep.
my Facebook, my every kind of book, and share this information because, you know, the president, there was a bill, there was a procedure in place where, you know, ICE agents couldn't go into schools and houses of worship.
Right.
And the president now, through executive order, you know, deleted that.
Yep.
And so now we're trying to move that back into place with this Protective Sensitive Locations Act. But it's going to take a mighty effort
Mhm.
to get this done. And, you know, it's going to take a lot of people. So all of us on this webinar tonight, because I know a lot of the people on there
Yeah.
have significant social media followings and of other educators. So I hope we can push this out to the people on the social media apps that we use here tonight with this group.
Thank you, Cheryl. And I just put the link in, so if you want the direct link to that page. And while you're at it, support the Peace Corps. I mean, these things, children and the Peace Corps, how can you not? So please take advantage. And we'll be adding more to this page. Already putting together a next action item on a separate education topic. So that'll be coming out in the coming week.
Well,
And
thank you, Walter and Susan, for doing this because
Mhm.
this letter writing is so critically important to get bills recognized and passed. And the more people that you put this out to, the better. And so whoever you know, whatever organizations you know, send it out to them. And I think that this is maybe our only way to really sort of move this, I don't know, try to change what's happening here in the US. And so we can pay attention to this and keep paying attention to what's happening in education and
Yep.
bring more educators on board to understand that we have the power, okay, to change things.
Well,
exactly.
you know, my husband pointed this out to me when I was telling him about this today. He said, Cheryl, y'all need to get busy. I said, thank you, honey. I've been busy. He's like, y'all need to get busy.
He's telling that to you.
I know, and Keisha knows my husband, so, you know, Donna hears me talk about him. So, and I said, we are busy. He said, Cheryl, there is an election that's going to start, you know, in 2 years, we're going to have another election.
Yep.
All right.
And things can change significantly in those House seats. But
Yep.
he said, y'all need to get busy. I said, oh, thank you, Bubba Abshire.
right.
Very busy. That's why I'm getting dressed right now for this tonight. But you know, he had a valid point.
Yeah.
This isn't like hopeless
No.
because all these people are starting to run for office right now. I had a daughter that worked for a congressman for a decade, and she said the day after he got elected, the next morning he was campaigning. And I said, what? She said, Mother, we're at a campaign breakfast the day after the election, fundraising until the day of the next election because Congress people or those representatives are 2-year terms.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is extremely possible.
Right.
It is. And it's all about getting active.
Yeah.
Walter, would you call these witness slips? Is that a term that you use that in Springfield a lot, where you're for or against a particular bill or resolution? You sign a witness slip
Interesting.
electronically.
Heard of that?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that either.
I'm not
Um,
familiar.
We do that in Washington at the state level.
yeah,
Our legislative session is in session right now.
okay,
And every bill that comes along, anybody who's registered to vote in Washington can go online and mark themselves either pro or con
yeah.
a bill.
There's a witness slip.
We
Yep.
need that in Texas because we're in the legislature now and they are funneling tons of money out of the public schools. So
Right.
Richard, we need some witnesses over here in Texas.
Well, maybe that's just an Illinois thing. They make it
think
very
it
easy
is.
to,
Yeah.
and I've signed many pro or con.
Mhm.
It's great to know.
Thank you.
And by the way, that is another issue, by the way, is the funding in education and how
Right.
it's being really funneled away from public schools. And we have that experience here in New Hampshire. You do have in Texas, but I think at some point maybe we may discuss that whole voucher
Yeah.
ESA systems that are going around the country that are really intended to remove funding from public schools. And
Definitely a future focus. Yep,
oh,
absolutely.
yeah, that's that there's legislation virtually going on, at both the federal level and the state level simultaneously.
Yep.
Okay, and I think that people have to be well aware of that. It's just not at the federal level, just only the federal level. It's really at the state level too.
And as Jerry Maguire said, follow the money. That's where
Now
is
follow the
goal.
money.
Yep.
That's right. That's
So,
right.
Samantha, on the ground in New Jersey. New Jersey is a great state and certainly a proud tradition. As an educator in New Jersey, what are you seeing and hearing, and how do you feel about this conversation tonight from where you're sitting?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of the same sentiments that everyone's saying. Districts have been transparent about like their policies and procedures, what we should be doing as teachers if we see anything happening, but really the focus is still on our students and just keeping the learning going, building that inclusive environment and, just doing everything that we can.
The sense of fear. Well, two-part question. And you can certainly answer it as you see appropriate. There's the fear piece, but there's the also what does it matter to me piece. Well, what difference does this make to me? I'm teaching social studies in middle school, and this isn't my problem. I'm not going to make any difference on this. Um, are you hearing that, or is that something you don't hear, but we just kind of suspect it's there?
I'm not hearing that, but I think teachers in New Jersey do care about their students, whether
Of course.
it's this issue or any other issues that affect our students in the classroom, because especially in the high school classroom, students are aware of what's going on in the world around them.
Yeah.
And you can see emotional changes in them depending on what story is happening or how it's impacting their families.
Sure.
And so I think teachers are very aware of students' current emotional states and then planning activities, readings around that to either help take their mind off of it, provide that environment where they know they're supported, or letting them go talk to the school counselor.
Thank you. And I think that's a really important reminder of what's at stake on the ground in classrooms with kids. Thank you.
And Walter,
Yeah,
if
Will.
I may, I think,
Please.
Samantha, you hit on something really important. But as a school leader, one of the things that I've already seen, and again, I'm in a pretty low risk school environment, that this is sort of becoming a well-being issue in certain respects. My teachers have already expressed I don't get paid enough to deal with this mentality, right? I think COVID sort of pushed us collectively to the brink where we said, okay, ha ha ha, we're overworked and underpaid.
Yep.
Okay, now we really mean it.
Right.
And I see a regurgitation of some of those emotions where already my staff are sort of at their wits' end in terms of their capacity to care for the kids. And so, we always try to create a safe space in the classrooms. I think leaders always try to create a safe space within the school building.
Yeah.
And I have found that recently I am doubling down on those efforts so that no matter what happens outside the walls, we feel comfortable here. And that gets harder and harder and harder. And so I see that ramping back up again with teachers.
Well, that's so important. And, you know, as I hear the two of you talk, it just comes welling up in my mind. The worst thing we can do is nothing, because the status quo is not sustainable. Too many people are worried about what could happen, not knowing what's in place to protect themselves and their kids. And so the more we have the information we need, the more we take action collectively to support each other to put things in place, the more we're able to help ease the stress and the sense of I'm going to burn out. This is above my pay grade. I don't even know what I would do if I was put in that situation. And so all the more reason to say, do something. You may not have all the answers tonight. You may not know tomorrow morning what the next step is, but do something. Do not allow this inertia to paralyze people and make them feel like they're victims.
You know, Walter, this is like the Titanic story to me. You know, it's like, here we are, here's the tip of this iceberg. We see that, and Will, that breaks my heart.
Yeah.
But I know I was a school principal for many years,
Yep.
and you know, wasn't that many days ago that we've got to nurture and support it, you know, take care of our staff, and they are overworked, underpaid, you know, family tension, all of the above.
Mhm.
But the concern for me is that this is the tip of the iceberg, you know, the idea that we may have undocumented students, you know, as you said, well, I came from the underlying under the water piece is the funding for IDEA, is the Title I money
Yep.
that, oh, yes, I have students that have special needs in my classroom. Well, yes, I have an aide that comes in, or, you know, I have, you know, we team teach. My child goes to you know, some kind of a classroom for extra supports. We have extra materials, et cetera, et cetera. We're a Title I school. We get more funding. What's sitting underneath that iceberg, that water, is this whole concept of the Department of Ed. Are we going to have it? Are we going to have that same funding? Is it going to get parsed out to states? And
Right.
depending on the politics in your state,
Right.
well, are they going to, is that going to be, you know, just a flow through directly to the districts? Or depending on the politics in the state, are they going to carve out huge pieces of IDA and federal programs money and do as they will at the state level? And then the schools are going, wait a minute, how many teachers do I have to get rid of that were funded with IDEA or federal programs money? So this Titanic education problem weighs on me heavily because I have a daughter that, you know, is in education. I spent my life in it. All my friends are
Yep.
public educator
Yep.
people. My husband goes, those are all your little friends. I said, yes. And we've been doing it our whole life. Kathleen, you and Susan, you, Walter, y'all all are little friends here. And Keisha and Don over there, you know,
Yep.
but we've got a tip of the iceberg problem. And Will, I feel you as a former school principal that
Yeah.
you're trying to, that spinning plates where you run back and forth to all the plates and you're trying to keep them all spinning.
Yep.
You know, so let me just say, you know, I agree with you, Cheryl, you know, exactly. It is just the tip of the iceberg. And
Yeah.
I've read that entire section in Project 2025 around education
Yeah.
and they plan to enact every page of that project. Okay. But Title I and IDA, yeah, I think the Department of Ed could certainly be broken up. It takes an act of Congress to eliminate it, but you know, these executive orders think they can, you know, write everybody off. But anyway, those I see as block grants. I see Title I being used for vouchers,
Right.
okay, or ESAs. IDA money, who knows how that will get allocated to every district,
Right.
school district. Who knows what will happen to that?
Right.
They, in the end, plan to eliminate Title I completely. Okay.
Right.
But the funding, this is where, you know, everybody's concerned about that. And I think it'll be around, but I think they'll have lots of, latitude on where it goes. Okay.
yeah.
IDA is a little bit different. I think that, and I haven't spoken with anyone that's a support organization around special education
Mhm.
outside of the school district, but I definitely will want to interface with a few people I know already at the state level.
Yep,
But I think that we should be very concerned about this.
yep,
I will tell you that Head Start will be gone.
right.
That's the plan.
Yep.
And all of this is so disruptive, and families have no idea how this is coming down. And
No,
this is why we need to have more and more people come
Right.
to our meetings and to get informed.
Yep.
So they can share this among their states, their towns, their counties, whatever. But you have to be well informed today about
Yep.
exactly what's going to happen, because it is going to affect you.
Yep.
And right now, we see that there's more and more money will be taken out of public education, and it will have direct impact, okay,
Yeah.
on the education of our children.
Thank you, Kathleen. Now, Cheryl, you had said very explicitly about halfway through, this is about leadership. And we have someone here in the call who, in a past leadership life, had to make a decision as a leader about whether or not certain people were coming into their building. Susan, would you like to share a little more about your past experience facing something like this?
Sure. And I need to preface it by saying my first teaching job was at a Head Start preschool. And it was back about the time dinosaurs were still walking the earth. And as a Head Start teacher, the children were bused back and forth. And there were occasions when the bus would stop to let a child be dropped off, and there was no one there to pick them up.
Mm.
And the reason there was no one there to pick them up was because their parents had been picked up in an INS raid.
Ah,
And there was no one else in some circumstances who had permission to take custody of that child.
right.
There is no experience I can think of in the normal course of working in education as sad as a 3 or 4-year-old having nowhere to go and being brought back to school on the bus because the adults in their lives are not there. And I think that really impacted my whole point of view about working with families where this kind of thing could happen. And the fact, I mean, this was not all that long ago that this was happening. And so I was a principal at an elementary school in a neighborhood where it was an entry point for families from Central America, South America, Mexico. And it was not unusual for families to have arrived in a variety of different ways. And some folks were documented, some were not. But 93% of my school were families that were immigrants in some way, shape, or form.
Wow.
And at that time in California, a proposition was passed that did what's happening now, of saying that schools are not going to be sanctuary places for undocumented students. And I had to come to a decision about how I was going to deal with that at my school site, because that was just unacceptable to me.
Right.
I was not going to just let anybody waltz onto my campus, which was going to be targeted because of where it was and because of the population.
Yeah.
And I was not ever going to be responsible for a child either getting home and not having a parent there, or I was not going to be responsible for a child being hauled off because they didn't have the proper documentation.
Yeah.
And so I made the decision, despite the fact that I was a single mom with 2 kids
Mhm.
in elementary, one in elementary, one in middle school.
Yeah.
I did have a support system in my life, and I just said to my folks who would have been taking care of the kids, I can't do this. I won't do it. If someone comes on campus and they want access to records, they want access to kids, they, whatever it is, I am going to refuse to allow that to happen. And so y'all need to know that you may have to go pick up my kids, because
Right.
that's the way it may be.
Yeah.
And that I had to make that decision because that was the only thing I could do to live with myself. And I had grown up in an environment where my dad had taught me, and my own work experience had taught me, there's always another job. May not be the job you want at the time, but there is always another job if you're willing to do the work that's being asked.
Yeah.
And it was more important to me to do that than it was to act out of fear and comply with something because I was afraid not to. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Hey, it's history. Hey. Powerful and personal. Thank you for sharing it in this moment. And makes us realize that at some point we can all be faced with having to make a decision, and there's no easy way. You know in the moment what you're going to do.
I think that your story is one which will be told over and over again. And the Head Start issue, I know in my school district in Louisiana, as many school districts across the country have done, they have taken over. They have been ceded the responsibility for Head Start.
Yeah.
Right.
Over a decade ago, we did that. We applied, we took over the entire Head Start program. We had buildings, we hired and trained, staff. And that program was an integral part of the pipeline into our preschool and kindergarten programs, which shifted and changed the trajectory of these children's lives
Yep.
significantly.
Yep.
I mean, we have the data to prove what happened prior to that, and once we took that over. So I think, Susan, your commentary on this is on point with what is going to be a focal point around this country, because many school districts now run the Head Start program.
Yes,
Right.
and we had Head Start classes on my elementary school
Yeah.
campus. Fortunately, because it was an initiative, there were battles in court, and it was overturned as being unconstitutional. So I was not on my guard the whole 4 years I was at that school, but
Yeah.
yeah.
But in that moment, Susan, when you, that clarity to make that decision, to know what you had to do, that certainly it's an awful moment, but didn't it also provide some sense of relief to have made the decision and to know no matter what you were going to face next, that you knew who you were and what you were going to have to choose to do if the moment arose?
Oh, very much so. Yeah.
And so I want to reiterate that to everyone. The more you're able to think these things through, get in touch with the core of who you are and what you can and can't do, the more you're able to deal with the overwhelmingness of all of this and the uncertainty of all of this, because at your core, who you are is what's going to make the difference. I will say this because that is such an intensely personal story to share, and I'm putting you all on the spot, so please feel free to completely ignore me and look the other way. But if you're comfortable putting your email address in the chat box, so that if your story, what you shared tonight, whether it was Kathleen about following the money, whether it's about Cheryl talking about being an advocate in Texas, Susan with her story, Samantha with what she's experiencing at the classroom level in New Jersey, so that people can reach out to you personally. Because I think a lot of the work we're going to wind up doing here is going to be those personal one-on-one stories. Not everyone's going to want to jump in a town hall and tell their personal worries or their personal where they're feeling stuck. So thank you. Thank you for dropping your email addresses. So if you'd like to have a personal conversation with any one of us on the panel and, continue because they said something that resonated with you, that makes you feel like that's a person I need to talk some more with.
Well, Walter,
Feel
it'd
free
be
to reach
nice
out.
if you could put your contact information,
Oh, I did.
because some people here tonight may have topics or information from the group here that they could share with you. It would
Absolutely.
lead to us covering it at another meeting, or
Right.
resources they could share that you could add to the
Yes.
Worthy Educator site. So folks, don't be shy about reaching out to Superman. Oh, wait, I mean Walter McKenzie, who will add it to the Worthy Educator site or reach out to you.
Right.
So Walter, I'm
Please.
just volunteering you. I'm voluntolding you.
Hey, that's
All
what
I
we're here
can.
for. Yes.
Well,
And that's what we want because, and Samantha can attest to this. I reached out to her and she said, yes, I'd like to become a part of this. We got her in the last planning meeting. We're like, talk to us about where you're coming from and what you're saying. Because if the 5 of us or 6 of us sit around and talk about what we think, we'll all be in agreement. We need to hear from you so you can wise us up and broaden our perspective on what else is going on, what are other concerns that we haven't even thought of yet, and what are the topics we can address. So Cheryl, yes, you can voluntold me to the end of time. We're begging you to share that with us. We need that insight.
right. No,
Now,
we're all in
please.
this together,
Yes.
Let's not forget, I mean, I've been away from, education. I'm always related to education and I'm always talking to teachers or leaders, but we are all in this together, and only in numbers can we actually create the change that we want. Okay.
Thank you.
So be an advocate, and Cheryl and I are a longtime advocates, and we're more than happy to talk with you and help you along your way. So, please reach out. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah,
Walter,
and so,
can I put your email address in the chat before we start losing people?
well, sure.
Okay, just check.
And
Oh, Walter does have his email in.
It
yeah,
is there.
well, put it in twice. I'm
Okay.
good.
Just,
Okay.
I just
Oh, another one.
need
Okay.
some
There you go.
people to give Walter some more content.
There you go.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
mean, this thing is taking off and we need all of it. So,
Right.
so as an action item, as a practical action item, as we wrap up the last few minutes here, I want to talk about the next step. If you're sitting here thinking, yes, I'm so agreeing with all of this, what is the next practical step? Here's the next practical step. Develop your communication network. And that isn't as big and awesome as it sounds. It's whether it's a spreadsheet or a database or your email contacts. Identify a core group of educators and legislators with their immediate contact information. And for you, that can mean email addresses, it can mean phone numbers. But each of us sitting here tonight, if you make the time and sit down in front of an empty Excel spreadsheet, for lack of a better example, and just start writing down the names of the 8, 10, 12 people you talk to all the time in education. Sure, it could be about lesson planning. Sure, it could be about some one-off news item or some upcoming professional learning you're going to meet together at. But the people that you talk to all the time, that you have a lot in common with, that are in your sphere, and get their names down. And of course, their contact, their email address. Then go to the links that I was sharing from EDInfluencers and identify your congressmen, your senators, your state level representatives, your local representatives, your school board members. That core list should have those 8 to 12 educators that are your closest confidants and people you talk to all the time, and your representatives. That's your core group. Make it into a save file, however you want to save it, so that you can use it. Why do you want this handy? Because at whatever point the dam breaks for you, and you just get out of your chair and say, that's enough. I need to get some people together and do something about this. You don't want to have to start building that list on that day. You do not have to wonder, who do I want to reach out to? Have a list in front of you of those a dozen or less educators, plus all your elected officials, so that when you decide to send off that first communication, they're right there. And you can say, this is what I want to do. This is what's important to me. Talk to me about how we should do this. I need you in on this. Building out from that core group over time, then you start adding education stakeholders, parents, community members, even business representatives who you know locally who are really invested in education, who you see in your schools, or who you see supporting students in the community. Add them to that list. And as you send out messaging, as you continue to identify what it is you want to stand for in all of this, use that list. Let them hear from you. Let them respond. Let them show you how much they value what you're saying, so that that becomes your movement. Because not everybody needs to have a national town hall and trying to pull people in from all over. The real work is going to get done with what you can do locally, with the people that you trust and work with and know, who share your values and want to do what's right for kids, and just need someone to kind of bring everybody together to have the conversations. So as we move on from our February town hall, if you want an action item to take with you that by the time we meet again in March, you could say, I've done this, I've accomplished this, I now have something concrete that's a tool for me, that's specific to me, that nobody else could make because it's mine. Make your own communications list with all of these people on it, just the core group to start, so that you have confidence moving forward, that you know who your people are, you know how to get in touch with them, and they are going to hear from you. Panel, any thoughts on that?
Well said.
It's so critical.
Yeah, it's part of what you talked about earlier, Walter, with the four roles, the four ways to work with folks. It's building alternatives. It's making your community, and that's really an important part.
So maybe a quick reminder, Walter, on that letter writing. So just as a reminder, so for people to do that.
Yeah, so going back to
And is there a particular link?
yes,
Okay,
let me
maybe we just do that
share
again.
the screen again just to bring
Because
it
I
up.
think that's really very important.
Yeah, when you come to the EDInfluencers page, go down to Speak Up and Be Heard.
Okay,
And the very top action item now is Protecting Sensitive Locations Act.
okay,
And right below that is the Reauthorize the Peace Corps Act. We're going to be
Okay.
adding another item in the next week. And each of them are meant to be so quick and so easy. And the language is written for you. So please make a point to stop in and click and have your voice be counted. Thank you, Kathleen.
thanks.
So we meet again on March 7th.
No,
March
we
10th.
were looking at dates, and St. Patty's Day is on a Monday, so that even knocked out what would have been 1 month away. So we're looking at Monday, March 24th. Here is the Zoom link. If you want to register tonight, we'll get it up on the site tomorrow. But
Yeah, the site had March 10th, Monday, which is not the
I don't
same.
think it's on the site yet. Oh,
Well,
that's for the panel. That's for the Transforming Education panel.
Okay,
That's March 10th. And then 17th, we didn't think we could get much of a turnout on St. Patty's Day to do a town hall. So we'll do the 24th. We're working on putting together the agenda between now and then. We try to be agile and responsive because a lot's got to be happening between now and then.
Yeah.
If you have something really stuck in your craw that you want to address, please email us and tell us. You know, sure, there's a myriad of things that we could focus on, but if there's something that's immediate, we certainly felt protecting kids was a great one for February.
Mhm.
But if you have strong feelings, please let us know because we want these to be your town halls. So any other thoughts, questions, or final words of wisdom as we're wrapping up our February town hall?
Well, one of the things, again, I sort of want to mention to everyone here is that they should always check on their state legislation and be very much aware of what's happening in your state because that will make the difference.
Yeah.
Okay. And stay informed. Okay. About that and, you know, and ask questions, contact your local legislators.
Yeah.
So, all of this is going to go by very fast.
Yeah.
Okay. Our legislators are in session now, but you know, by June, they're all done.
Right.
Okay. So there's not a lot of time between now and June.
No.
And they're going to pass some very serious legislation. And again, it's really running parallel to the federal legislation.
Yeah.
So be much aware and of what's going to happen and what's going to happen in your schools from this legislation.
And honestly, I think because they are coordinating at multiple levels, they're getting some things done. But you know what? In my humble opinion, there's more of us than there are of them. If we can get our act together
Right.
and we can
That's
start voicing what we know is right and best for kids,
right.
then we can push back. This is not a done deal. But
That's right.
Because there's an election coming.
amen.
Well,
There is an election coming.
right. Well, there's elections, those 3 elections, I think, what, 2 in Florida and 1 in Texas, is there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's 3 seats in the House of Representatives that are going to be determined actually within the next, I think, 60 days, I think.
Yeah.
And I think it's 2 in Florida and 1 in New York,
One in New
actually.
York? Okay, I'm sorry. 1 in New York, 2 in Florida. Okay. Yeah. So
There's
those
a
are
lot going on.
all held by I believe I think they're all held by Republicans. So
Mhm.
keep in mind, you know, donate, support, campaign, whatever you can do.
Yeah. Amen.
Walter, can we have the panel hang on for just a minute
Of course.
after we close? Because
Of
I
course.
have a quick idea.
Yeah. All right. And Samantha, thank you for joining us. Samantha has made a world of difference in our planning, and your presence here tonight is felt. So thank you for being with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
All right.